You may be poisoning your liver without even realizing it, and with foods that are part of your breakfast. Many people think that alcohol and fried foods are the biggest enemies of the liver, but the truth is that several seemingly common foods consumed on a daily basis are linked to the development of hepatic steatosis, the accumulation of fat in the liver, also known as fatty liver. This problem, which mainly affects people over the age of 50, usually develops silently. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't itch, it doesn't change your appetite, and that's why it's so dangerous. When the first symptoms appear, the liver may already be inflamed, enlarged, and unable to perform its basic functions. And although many people associate the disease with extreme habits, such as excessive alcohol consumption, what most intoxicates the liver over the years are certain types of foods that you can easily find in supermarkets, bakeries, and even health food stores. In this video, you will learn about 17 foods that overload the liver without you even noticing, including items that are sold as healthy and that, when consumed frequently, hinder the body's natural cleansing process, affect digestion, and promote fat accumulation in the organ. At the end, we will reveal the most dangerous foods on the list and why people over 60 need to pay extra attention. Even in small portions, they can accelerate the inflammatory process and aggravate other problems that are already present. And an important warning: the last item on the list is often consumed by people who think they are doing everything right, but it is one of the most closely associated with liver degeneration. Hepatic steatosis, or fatty liver, occurs when there is an abnormal accumulation of fat inside the liver cells. In mild stages, it may not cause symptoms. However, over time, this excess fat interferes with the organ's functions, promotes inflammation, and increases the risk of more serious diseases, such as cirrhosis, liver failure, and even liver cancer. According to data from the Brazilian Society of Hepatology, more than 30% of the adult population has some degree of fat in the liver, and many are unaware of it. Among the biggest risk factors are being overweight, insulin resistance, a sedentary lifestyle, and of course, an unbalanced diet. But what many people don't realize is that the problem doesn't just come from visible fat or overeating. It's in the details, in hidden ingredients, in ultra-processed foods, in the daily consumption of certain foods that chronically inflame the body. And that's where the danger lies. Over the years, the liver silently accumulates toxins and fat. And because it is a resistant organ that does not complain easily, the signs only appear when the damage has already spread. In this video, you will learn about 17 foods that, alone or in combination, promote this process. Some seem harmless, others carry an unjustified reputation for being healthy. Let's start with an item that many people consume early in the morning, while still fasting, thinking they are doing their body a favor. At number 17 on our list is a food that many people consume, believing they are making a healthy choice: flavored yogurt. These products are sold as sources of calcium and protein, and many packages even highlight phrases such as strengthens immunity or aids digestion. But the truth is that most flavored yogurts contain high amounts of sugar, modified starch, and chemical additives that overload the liver in the long run. Excess sugar is one of the main culprits behind fat accumulation in the liver. And the problem isn't just the sugar you put in your coffee. It's hidden in these processed foods that look healthy. In a single container of strawberry-flavored yogurt, for example, it's common to find between 15 and 20 grams of sugar, which is almost the entire daily recommendation for an adult. And because this sugar is mixed with artificial colors, flavorings, and thickeners, digestion is even slower, forcing the liver to work twice as hard to process substances that it doesn't even recognize as natural. Over the years, this type of product accumulates in the routine of those who eat yogurt for breakfast, as an afternoon snack, or before bed. The result can be an increasingly overworked, inflamed liver that has difficulty regenerating. Next on the list, we'll talk about an ingredient that is present in almost every bakery in Brazil, and that acts as direct fuel for fat accumulation in the liver. In 16th place is a food that is part of the daily diet of millions of Brazilians: French bread. Although it is a common choice for breakfast or an afternoon snack, white bread has a direct impact on the liver when consumed in excess. Because it is made with refined flour, it has a high glycemic index, meaning it quickly raises blood sugar levels. This constant rise stimulates insulin production and, over time, can lead to insulin resistance, one of the main triggers for fat accumulation in the liver. In addition, French bread offers virtually no fiber, vitamins, or minerals that aid liver metabolism. It is nutritionally poor, but when consumed frequently, it overloads the body. And when combined with butter, margarine, or cold cuts, the impact becomes even more aggressive for those who are already prone to fatty liver. Next, we move on to a food that also seems harmless, but becomes a real risk when consumed the way most people do. Food number 15 on our list may seem like a practical, light, and healthy choice, but boxed juice is one of the industry's biggest deceptions. Even when labeled nectar or 100% fruit, many of these products contain added sugar, preservatives, and stabilizers that overload the liver, especially when consumed frequently. In addition, industrial processing destroys some of the fruit's natural fiber and antioxidants, leaving only concentrated sugar and additives. The problem is not drinking a glass of juice occasionally. The real risk lies in the daily habit: drinking it for breakfast, after lunch, offering it to your grandchildren, putting it in their lunchboxes. This repetition, combined with excess fructose and liquid calories, promotes fat storage in the liver and liver inflammation. Next on the list, we'll talk about a type of drink that is often associated with childhood, but can also cause serious liver problems when it's part of an adult's routine. In 14th place, this food is often found in many homes, especially those with children. But chocolate powder, consumed by adults and the elderly as a milk supplement, can also be a serious problem for the liver. The main reason is the absurd amount of sugar per serving. Some brands contain more than 75% sugar, not to mention the artificial colors, flavorings, and emulsifiers in the formula. In addition to increasing the risk of type 2 diabetes, excess sugar and additives stimulate fat accumulation in the liver, especially in those who are genetically predisposed, obese, or have an inflammatory diet. And since the product is usually consumed daily, sometimes twice a day, the impact builds up silently until the liver begins to show signs of overload. Next, let's talk about a type of meat that is easy to prepare, reasonably priced, but is among the foods most associated with chronic liver inflammation. Not all red meat poses an immediate risk to the liver. But when we talk about frozen and packaged ground meat, especially processed meat, the picture changes. These products often contain mixtures of meat from different sources, excess saturated fat, and preservatives such as nitrites and nitrates, which hinder digestion and can contribute to inflammatory processes in the liver. In addition, many people prepare this meat with excess oil, processed seasonings, or consume it with high-calorie foods, which further increases its impact on liver metabolism. And most concerning, because it is convenient, affordable, and tasty, it ends up being consumed frequently, without people realizing the accumulation of fat that is forming in their liver. Next on the list, we'll talk about a type of cold drink that many people consume to cool off, but which may be contributing to daily inflammation in your body. Few people associate zero-calorie or diet soft drinks with liver problems. After all, they don't contain sugar and are low in calories, right? The problem is that these products replace sugar with artificial sweeteners, such as aspartame, acesulfame K, and sucralose, which are not harmless when consumed frequently. Recent studies have shown that continuous use of these sweeteners alters the gut microbiota and overloads the liver, especially in people who are more sensitive, overweight, or have a history of liver disease. In addition, the acidity of the drink, combined with chemical additives and colorings, requires the liver to work harder to neutralize these substances without offering any nutritional value in return. In other words, it's liquid, it's cold, it tastes sweet, but it doesn't hydrate, it doesn't nourish, and it requires effort from the liver to be metabolized. And since many people replace water with zero-calorie soda, consumption becomes daily, and the risk continuous. Next, we'll talk about a healthy treat that has gained ground in fitness diets. But if consumed in the wrong way, it makes the liver work harder than it should. Reaching the 11th item on the list, we enter the realm of healthy traps. We're talking about the famous industrialized cereal bars, sold as a quick, light, and fitness-friendly option. But the nutritional reality of these bars is far from the marketing printed on the packaging. Many contain glucose syrups, inverted sugar, hydrogenated vegetable fat, flavorings, and even colorings. In other words, they are highly processed and low in nutritional density, exactly the type of food that requires extra effort from the liver to metabolize. In addition, because they seem harmless, bars are consumed in a hurry, without paying attention to their composition. Some versions even have more sugar than a slice of plain cake. For those who already have an overworked liver or are in the early stages of steatosis, this hinders the natural regeneration of the organ and also stimulates fat storage. And as if that weren't enough, this false sense of "I ate something healthy" can cause people to repeat the mistake several times a day. In 10th place on the list, you will discover a typical family lunch food that, depending on how it is prepared, can become an inflammatory bomb for the liver. Feijoada, dobradinha, mocotó. These typical Brazilian dishes carry immense emotional value, but also a load of animal fat and toxins that can be too much for the liver. It's not the beans that are the problem, but the cuts of meat used in the preparation. Sausage, ribs, bacon, sausage, and other smoked and cured meats. These ingredients are rich in saturated fat, excess salt, and chemical preservatives, such as sodium nitrite, which, when consumed frequently, contribute directly to liver inflammation. In addition, many of these processed meats accumulate byproducts of digestion that require effort from the liver to neutralize, especially in people with slower metabolisms. It is worth remembering, a well-made feijoada, in moderation and with a light side dish, will not cause problems for healthy people. But eating these foods frequently, without paying attention to how they are prepared, and without balancing them with foods that help detoxify, can lead to chronic liver overload. And it is precisely this silent overload that most concerns experts. Next, an ingredient that seems harmless, used to sweeten juices, smoothies, and even coffee. But when consumed every day, it slowly poisons the liver. In 9th place on our list is an ingredient that is gaining ground in the kitchens of those who want to avoid sugar: agave syrup. It is sold as a natural option, lighter and less harmful. But this reputation does not match the impact it can have on the liver, especially when used frequently. Agave syrup contains a very high concentration of fructose, much higher than refined sugar itself. And excess fructose is one of the main culprits behind fat accumulation in the liver, as it is metabolized almost exclusively by this organ. In other words, each spoonful of agave syrup may seem like a healthy choice, but in practice it is requiring your liver to work twice as hard to cope with the overload. Worse still, because it is liquid, tastes sweet, and is labeled as fit, many people overdo it, adding it to coffee, smoothies, porridge, or homemade desserts. Over the years, this continuous use can promote fatty liver disease even in people who do not drink alcohol, do not smoke, and maintain a normal body weight. In the next section, we will talk about an ingredient that has been part of Brazilians' diets since childhood, and that goes almost unnoticed when it comes to liver health. Few foods evoke as many fond memories as condensed milk, which ranks 8th on the list of foods that are bad for the liver. Found in desserts, toppings, and even everyday homemade recipes, it is sweet, convenient, and extremely dangerous for the liver when consumed frequently. Condensed milk is basically made up of milk and concentrated sugar. Just 2 tablespoons contain an average of 20 grams of sugar, almost the entire daily recommendation for a healthy adult. This excessive amount of sugar causes glycemic spikes, overloads insulin, and promotes fat accumulation in the liver, especially when combined with other high-calorie foods. In addition, because its texture and flavor are highly palatable, condensed milk encourages excessive consumption without the person realizing it. It's easy to open a can for a recipe and end up eating several spoonfuls lightly, without thinking about the metabolic consequences. And here's an important warning. It's not just the direct use of condensed milk that causes harm. It is hidden in cakes, puddings, brigadeiros, ice cream, pies, and even in some premium cereal bars sold as healthy. Next, we will talk about an ingredient that has become a staple in the kitchens of those seeking healthy substitutes, but which can have a devastating effect on the liver if used indiscriminately. In 7th place on our list is coconut oil, a food that became famous as a diet darling and started to be used in everything. in coffee, in frying pans, in cakes, in salads. But despite its healthy image, this oil has a very high concentration of saturated fat, and when consumed in excess, it can overload the liver and increase silent inflammation in the body. A study published in the Journal of Hepatology showed that diets high in saturated fat, even from natural sources such as coconut, can worsen non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And since it is usually consumed daily by people who believe they are making a healthy choice, the problem develops gradually, with no symptoms at first. This does not mean cutting coconut oil out completely, but for those who already have fat in their liver, constant consumption without monitoring can be a real risk. Next up is a food that seems like a dieter's ally, but hides additives and compounds that your liver cannot handle every day. In 6th place on our list is a food that many people believe to be lighter and healthier than traditional cold cuts: smoked turkey breast. It often appears in snacks, salads, and even in diets for those seeking weight loss. But the truth is that this product, despite appearing lighter, is rich in sodium, preservatives, and chemical additives, including nitrites and nitrates, which require a huge effort from the liver to process. In addition, turkey breast goes through several stages of industrialization, which include artificial smoking and the addition of thickeners and flavor enhancers. All of this can overload the liver in the long run, especially when consumed daily. The biggest problem is that this food has a health protector image, which leads many people to consume it without moderation, believing they are making a lighter choice than ham, bologna, or salami. But the liver does not differentiate between marketing and reality. It responds to excess chemicals, salt, and additives with a slow process of deterioration, which can eventually develop into steatosis, chronic inflammation, or more serious liver dysfunction. Now we're going to reveal the food that tops our list, and which, despite appearing natural, can hide a risk disguised as sweetness. In 5th place, we find one of the biggest nutritional misconceptions of everyday life: boxed juices, including those labeled 100% fruit. Even the most natural ones, with no added sugar, undergo intense industrial processes, such as pasteurization, high-temperature filling, and the use of preservatives. This process drastically reduces the presence of fiber and micronutrients, and leaves the product with high concentrations of free fructose, the type of sugar that directly overloads the liver. And when the formula includes sweeteners, artificial colors, and flavorings, the impact is even greater. The body interprets this as liquid fruit, but the truth is that the liver is receiving a cocktail of fast-absorbing sugars and chemical compounds. Consumed regularly, at breakfast, as an afternoon snack, with meals, these juices silently contribute to the accumulation of fat in the liver, even in people who think they are eating well. It is because of this type of trap that pharmacies continue to profit, while many people continue to get sick believing that they are taking care of themselves. And what's next? An ingredient so common in homes that it goes unnoticed, but when consumed in excess, it impairs liver function and disrupts the entire metabolism. In 4th place is something that everyone uses, but almost everyone overuses: table salt. The problem is not salt itself. The body needs sodium to function properly. The issue is that most people consume 2 to 3 times more salt than recommended, according to data from the World Health Organization. This excess increases blood pressure, retains fluids, and most importantly, forces the liver and kidneys to work harder to maintain the body's balance. And we're not just talking about visible salt. Processed meats, ready-made seasonings, bouillon cubes, processed foods, crackers, and even regular bread contain hidden sodium in absurd amounts. The result is chronic metabolic overload, which aggravates existing inflammation, promotes fat accumulation in the liver, and reduces the liver's ability to regenerate. And the most dangerous thing is that our taste buds get used to it. The more salt we eat, the less we notice the excess. The next item seems harmless because it is common on Brazilian tables, but its impact on the liver is more profound than many people realize. Entering the top 3 on the list, we come to one of the most debated villains when it comes to liver health: excess red meat. Beef, especially fatty cuts such as picanha, cupim, ribs, and chuck, is rich in protein, but also in saturated fat and compounds that require a lot of work from the liver to metabolize. When consumed frequently and without balance with vegetables, fiber, and water, the liver ends up accumulating fat instead of eliminating it. In addition, cooking at high temperatures, such as grilling or frying, generates inflammatory substances that also overload the digestive system and liver metabolism. You don't have to eliminate red meat entirely, but you should rethink how often you eat it, the type of cut, and how you prepare it. According to recent studies published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, diets high in processed or poorly balanced red meat are associated with an increased risk of hepatic steatosis and insulin resistance. For those who already have signs of fatty liver, reducing consumption can speed up recovery and relieve symptoms such as chronic fatigue, slow digestion, and abdominal weight gain. Food number 2 on the list seems healthy, but it hides a type of sugar that acts as a real fuel for fat in the liver. In second place on our list is a food that carries the label of healthy, but in practice acts as a disguised villain for the liver: industrialized whole wheat bread. Many people believe they are making a good choice when they swap French bread for whole wheat bread from the supermarket. But when you read the label, the reality is quite different. Most of these products contain white flour, sugar, vegetable fat, and a huge number of additives, including colorings that make the bread brown to look more natural. These breads have a high glycemic index, which means they cause spikes in blood glucose and force the liver to act as a constant regulator of these imbalances. In addition, the fiber content is generally much lower than what the body really needs, which hinders proper intestinal function and the elimination of toxins. The worst part is that because whole wheat bread has a positive image, it ends up being consumed at every meal: breakfast, snack, dinner. And when this is combined with a sedentary lifestyle or the consumption of other foods on the list, the liver enters a state of silent overload. In the next and final section, you will discover the number 1 food on our list. It seems natural, is easy to find, but can be the most aggressive for the liver when consumed in the wrong way. At the top of our list is a food that should help the liver, but when misused, it can cause exactly the opposite effect: the famous detox juice. That's right. The problem is not the juice itself, but how it is prepared when it is consumed, and especially the illusion that it compensates for overeating. Many people mix high glycemic fruits, such as mango, watermelon, or banana, use sweetened coconut water, add honey, industrialized ginger powder, and drink it all on an empty stomach, believing they are cleansing their bodies. In practice, this type of juice provides a huge load of fructose and sugar first thing in the morning, which requires immediate effort by the liver to metabolize everything. Even more so if the person already has signs of steatosis or insulin resistance. In addition, when consumed daily as a meal replacement, detox juice can cause glycemic fluctuations, early hunger, and increased fat accumulation in the liver over time. And the most ironic thing is that many people drink this juice after a weekend of overindulgence, believing that they are cleansing their body, when in fact, they are just adding more overload to their tired liver. Does detox juice work? Yes, as long as it is made with balance, with leaves, real fiber, little fruit, and not as a magic solution. Therefore, rather than cutting out individual foods, what really helps is understanding how the liver works, what it can tolerate, and what silently wears it down. And now that you know the 17 foods that cause the most fat in the liver, the next step is up to you. Rethink your habits, question what seems healthy, and remember that your body speaks before it gets sick. If this video helped you in any way, like and share it with someone who needs to know about these foods. And if you watched until now, comment "liver alert," just so we know who really values their health. Oh, and take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, because here we deliver information that pharmacies don't want you to know.